I'm both honored and happy to be able to take part in this Global Parenting Summit sponsored by Epic Parenting. Since we are in the midst of Sfiras HaOmer, I decided to speak about a topic that has connection both to Sfiras HaOmer and to educating a child and parenting. The Sefer HaChinuch says that after the Jewish people celebrated their physical freedom from Egypt on the first day of Pesach, they knew that 50 days later they were going to receive the Torah, and they anxiously counted the days until that giving of the Torah would take place, because in order to achieve anything, a person has to aspire towards it. He has to long for it and prepare for it. And that is the concept of Sfiras HaOmer. In this vein, there is a medrash that says the following. Rabbi Akiva hayadoresh. Rabbi Akiva was giving a shir, ubikshu hatalmidim lenamnim, and his students were falling asleep. Nothing has changed in 2,000 years. And Rabbi Akiva bikesh la'oraram, he wanted to awaken them. So he said to them, what did Esther see that enabled her to rule over 127 provinces? Let Esther, the great-great-granddaughter of Sarah Imenu, who lived 127 years, rule over 127 medinos. So they all woke up. What in the world, is there any connection between Esther's 127 medinos and Sarah's 127 years, except that it's the same number? And Rabbi Akiva went on. Says the Michtav Meliyahu, Rabbi Akiva surmised that his students were falling asleep because he was speaking about levels way above them. And they reasoned, there's no purpose for us to listen to this. This is beyond us. We'll get a good rest now. And when Rabbi Akiva comes down to our level, we'll be able to be well rested and understand what he's saying. Rabbi Akiva told them, you're making a big mistake. Do you know how Esther was able to rule over 127 medinos? Because her whole life she aspired to be like Sarah, who not only lived 127 years, but Chazal say, Kulam Shavim Latova, all of Sarah's years were equally for the good, not good, but for the good. She was able to control and guide every second of her life for the good. That's the ultimate malchus, the ultimate royalty. Esther aspired to that high level of royalty. She never reached it, but at least she reached her own potential of ruling over 127 medinos. So too, said Rabbi Akiva, you have to listen to levels way beyond you in order to aspire to them and long for them, because then at least you'll be able to fulfill your own potential. My Rebbe, Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Mordechai Gifter Zatzal, said, the Gemara says, a person who wants to be wise should daven a little bit facing towards the south, because the menorah, which is a symbol of wisdom, was in the south side of the Beis Hamikdash. So the Rosh Yeshiva asked, why didn't it just say, Hayadrim Yachkin? If you daven to the south, you'll be a chacham. Why did it say whoever wants to be a chacham should daven to the south? And he said simply, because if you don't want to be a chacham, you can daven to the south 1,000 times a day. You'll never be a chacham. Everything depends on a want and a will and an aspiration. You have to have goals. You have to have aspirations, initiative. And not only can you achieve your potential if you have enough longing and enough aspiration, but sometimes you can even create new potential. It says Esav came in and found out that Yaakov Avinu had taken his brachos. So he says to his father, Borcheni Gamoni, give me a bracha too. And Yitzchak tells him there are no more brachos. And Esav begins to cry bitterly. And immediately after that, Yitzchak Avinu gives him a slew of brachos that we're suffering from till today. So the Bali Musar asked, where did the brachos come from? 2 minutes before, there were no more brachos in heaven. And they answer, since Esav wanted those brachas so badly, he created new brachas in the heavens. But that's not enough. The story is told of a person who wanted to be a multimillionaire. And he realized the only way that he could ever become a multimillionaire is if he wins the lottery. So every day, 3 times a day, at the end of his Shmona Esrei, he would daven to the Rabban Shalom, please God, let me win the lottery. I promise you half will go to tzedakah, the other half I'll use only for good things. Rabban Shalom, please let me win the lottery. This went on for 20 years. After 20 years, the Malachi, Hasharesh, the angels came to the Rabban Shalom and they said, Rabban Shalom, we can't take this anymore. Every day we have to listen to this person beg and cry, let me win the lottery. He sounds sincere. What would be so terrible, Rabban Shalom, if you let him win the lottery? And the Rabban Shalom said, I'd love to let him win the lottery. He never bought a ticket. If you want to win the lottery, you have to buy a ticket. There's a medrash that says the same idea. Chalamoseim shel tzadikim, the dreams of tzadikim span heaven and earth. Bashamayim uva'aretz. Yaakov Avinu dreamt of a ladder firmly planted on the ground with its head in the heavens. Chalamoseim shel rishoyim, but the dreams of rishoyim are lo bashamayim v'lo ba'aretz. They're not in the heavens, they're not in the earth. Paro dreamt he was standing on the Nile, on the water. I think what it means is tzaddikim have the loftiest dreams and aspirations in the heavens, but they put a ladder on the ground and they climb one rung at a time to reach those goals and aspirations. It's not enough just to aspire. You have to have a program how you reach those aspirations. And Rishoyim, wicked people, have no great aspirations. They have no program. Everything is wishy-washy on the water. So that is one qualification. If you give a child aspirations and goals, but you have to give them a program how to reach them, long-range goals and short-range goals also. There's another condition. The Vilna Gaon explains the following pasuk: Lev chacham liyamino v'lev ksil l'shmola. The heart of a wise person is to the right, and the heart of a fool is to the left. He says the following: when you're learning a sefer in Hebrew, what you've learned already is to the right. What you've yet to learn is to the left. A foolish person only looks to the left, sees how much there is to learn, and says, I'll never do it, and closes the book. The chacham also wants to learn more and more. But every once in a while, he looks to the right and sees what he's accomplished, and that gives him the ability to go on, the incentive to go on. Yes, a person should never be satisfied when it comes to spiritual things with a minimum, but he should be happy with what he's accomplished, because if he doesn't recognize what he's accomplished and he's not happy with it, he'll get frustrated and not want to continue on. So you have to have a balance between both things. You have to be happy with what you've accomplished, but not satisfied with it when it comes to spiritual things, and always want to grow and to do more and more. There's another qualification. They say that the Chafetz Chaim used to come into the Beis Medrash in Radin and put out the lights at midnight and force his students to go to sleep. And they would protest. What young, budding Talmid Chacham wants to go to sleep at 12 o'clock? We want to stay in the Beis Medrash and learn till 3 in the morning. So the Chafetz Chaim says, very nice, but that's Yetzer Hara, that's a Satan. So they said, what is the Satan going to gain if we learn 3 more hours at night? He said, first of all, you have to get up at 7 o'clock to daven. Going to sleep at 3 and getting at 7 is very, very improbable. So we already know what the Satan gains if you don't get up to daven. Let's say you do get up. How long can you keep up that schedule? Going to sleep at 3 and getting up at 7. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, until you fall from exhaustion off your feet and can't learn for a whole month. So the Satan is a very wise and patient businessman. He's willing to invest a few hours of learning now for a whole month of not learning later. And he said that's what we say in davening every day. Take away the Satan from before us and behind us. Now the Satan is an obstacle. I understand you can have an obstacle in front of you. How can you have an obstacle behind you? And he gives an example. Imagine a woman who wants to do chesed. And she has this bug, and she's so motivated to do chesed that the Satan knows that if he tries to stop her, she'll bulldoze him over. So you know what he does? He runs behind her, and he pushes. You want to do chesed? Fine. Chesed in the morning, chesed in the afternoon, chesed at night. Don't eat, don't sleep, don't see your children, don't see your husband. How long can she keep that up? A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? So she burns out completely and doesn't want to look at chesed for the next 3 years. So there's a Satan behind you. A person has to be able to grow and to have aspirations, but they have to grow slowly at their pace, not too fast, not too slow. And they have to ask advice from those that know them. Am I going too slow in my growth, or am I going too fast in my growth? And all of this is reflected in Sfiras HaOmer. We count anxiously the days in order to show that we have aspirations and longing for the Torah. And that way we'll be able to acquire the Torah when the time comes. But we don't count down, we count up. Because it's not enough just to long to stand on the ground and say, I wish I was up there on the top of the ladder. You have to climb the ladder, one rung at a time. So we count up. What am I going to accomplish today that will give me a little bit more incentive and a little bit more power to be able to get a little bit closer to my goal? It's not enough just to count the days. You have to make the days count too. And that's why we count the week at the end of the week, because every week we look back and see that we've accomplished something. It's not enough just to long and aspire towards what you don't have, but you have to be happy with what you've accomplished and recognize it. And therefore, at the end of the week, we say, I may not be where I'd like to be up on top of the ladder on the 49th, 50th day, but I'm at least a week farther closer to it than I was a week before. So, and therefore also it says everybody has to count Sfiras HaOmer according to their own pace, even though we're all counting the same day, but you can't be Yotze, can't fulfill your mitzvah with somebody else. Everybody has their pace, everybody has to climb that ladder at their pace. According to this, even sometimes the failures and the setbacks can also be very positive. It says that Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, Torah tells us that Yaakov left Beersheva to tell me Shaziva Sadik min Hamakom Osaroshim. When a tzaddik leaves a place, it makes an impression. That as long as the tzaddik is in the city, hu ziva, hu hoda, hu hadora, he's the light and the glory and the beauty of the city. The Maharal explains he enlightens the people with Torah knowledge, and he makes them glorious with mitzvahs and beautiful with midos, with good character traits. Yotza hasadik min hamakom, when a tzaddik leaves the place, pona ziva, pona hoda, pona hadora, all of that, the light and the glory and the beauty leave with him. Now it's a little difficult for me to understand why Rashi describes that when a tzaddik leaves a place, it makes an impression. I would say that it takes away an impression. It doesn't make an impression. It's not osa roshim, it's mechasa roshim. So why does Rashi describe it as making an impression? Perhaps the idea is the following. Before the tzaddik came to that place, there was no light, glory, and beauty. But people didn't miss it. That was status quo. The tzaddik came to the place and brought all this light and glory and beauty to the place. And now he leaves and he takes it all with him. Are you going to tell me that it went back to what it was before? No, there's a difference. Now people miss it and they long for it again. That's something positive. That's tzaddik makes an impression. That's why it says, Sheva Yipol tzaddik v'kom. A tzaddik can fall 7 times and still get up, not despite the fall, but sometimes it's the fall that gives him the desire and the longing. He had tasted what that level was. Now he's back down from it, but he's already tasted what it is, gives him the incentive to go on. So this is how a person has to educate his children. He has to give them goals and aspirations and initiatives and things to accomplish, long range. We want you to be the biggest tzaddik and the biggest Talmid Chacham and the best Bas Torah and Eishes Chayil. Long range goals. At the same time, to give them a ladder on short range goals of how to reach those goals, one rung at a time at their pace. and you have to celebrate their accomplishments and let them know that they've accomplished something. Not always only looking to where they're not, but looking back and seeing where they are and what they've accomplished, which should give them the incentive and the strength to go on. And each one, according to what they're capable of doing, that's how the goals should be created and how they should be put into practice at the child's own level, the child's own capabilities and abilities, how they're going to reach those goals. And a parent has to inform the child and let him know that he's accomplished something and celebrate those accomplishments in the family. So the child has the incentive to both realize that he has the power to grow and to achieve, and have the incentive to want to grow and achieve more, never to be satisfied with a minimum when it comes to spiritual things, but to be happy with what they've accomplished and want to constantly accomplish more and more. If we give our children these goals and aspirations, and we give them the means to go constantly towards those goals, one rung at a time, then we'll be able to bring up children that will reach their full potential. And that will be a tremendous schus for Klal Yisrael. Will bring Klal Yisrael very, very much nachas. Will bring the parents very much nachas. And I'm sure will bring great nachas to the Rabbanu Shalom. And in that schus, we'll be able to see the world reach its full potential. V'vias Mashiach Tzidkenu b'meiru v'yameinu.